diaspora to honor African heritage and African American culture as well. It is observed from December 26 to January 1, culminating in a gift giving and a feast. At first, observers of Kwanzaa avoided the mixing of holiday or its symbols, values and practice with other holidays, as doing so would violate the principle of kujichagulia and thus violate the integrity of the holiday, which is partially intended as a reclamation of the important African values. Today, many families celebrate Kwanzaa along with Christmas and New Year's. YAA Ashantewaa Ngidi is a Director, Institute of Afrikology and Co-Director of Kwanzaa South Africa National Social Cohesion advocate. She joins us now in our Durban studios. A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Greetings, my sister, and thank you for having us to speak about such an auspicious occasion like Kwanzaa.
And I love the way you dress, because, I mean, just as I was explaining the meaning and purpose of Kwanzaa and how it's amalgamated, especially across the African continent and the diaspora, I think very fitting the way you dress. But tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, when Kwanzaa was created, it came out of the continent, out of Tanzania, when Professor Maulana Karenga saw the need that Africans must have some principles. And also, lots of African families couldn't find themselves in the dominant celebration of Christmas. So in 1966, when it was created, the idea was to give African a sense of themselves in all of this festivity, that they could find themselves, that they could liberate themselves and dress the way they want, buy African art, speak about the African continent. So it really is a Pan-African cultural celebration, and more cultural than religious. And so dressing like this is important, but not just for Kwanzaa. We hope that Kwanzaa will allow Africans to feel free enough for every day to celebrate and liberate themselves by what they wear, what they eat, how they want to perform their rituals and things like that.
So, as you mentioned, Maulana Karenga was inspired by the culture in Tanzania, but he derived the term Kwanzaa from Swahili phrase matunda ya kwanza, meaning the first fruits of harvest. What is the significance of this, the first fruits of harvest?
Well, it really has to do with our seasons. As you know, the African calendar really starts in September. So we are now in the harvesting period of the true African cycle of the seasons. And so every year across the continent, in different ways, you will find that our kings, our indunas, our inkosis will be calling the people at some kind of acknowledgement of the first fruits. And in particular in Eastern Africa, it's the first fruit from your first food and fruit from your garden that was given to the ancestors. So the idea of the first fruits is also about the children passing on a legacy to the first fruits of the house. And in Kwanzaa, as you know, the 7 days, the youngest child is celebrated, and the children are actually the core to this. The children and the elders are core to the celebration of Kwanzaa, because we expect that the first fruits, which will be tilled by the elders, will also pass on some knowledge that they have learned from the elders when they become elders.
And I mean, our viewers are seeing in the background visuals of the symbols, the values and the principles of Kwanzaa. We'll get to that in just a moment. But I believe that Dr. Karenga was also inspired by an account he read of the Zulu festival of Umkosi Wegwashwama, which can you tell us a little bit more about that experience and how it came to inspire him into this idea of Kwanzaa?
Indeed, when Dr. Karenga was just here in Durban, South Africa, he came to do the inaugural lecture of the great poet laureate Mazizi Kunene on the hospice of the UK University of KwaZulu-Natal. And he had met Mazizi Kunene while he was in exile in California. And I am sure a part of that was having interface with the Zulu culture through Professor Mazizi Kunene. He was able to get some insight on this whole celebration that happens not just in KwaZulu but in Swaziland, in Malawi, in Zimbabwe. And being the anthropologist and scholar that he was, I am certain, having met him and spoken to him, he has taken the best of our celebrations across the continent to give to Africa extended, because we're not just talking about Africa in America and the Caribbean, we're talking about the Africans who have extended across the world, who are now celebrating this important celebration.
All right, so YAA Ashantewaa, so just please expand a little bit more on some of those 7 principles. We've been showing the candles, umoja, meaning unity, and the other symbols and values.
Oh, definitely. So there are 7 principles called Nguza Saba. And these 7 principles are what carries us through the 7 days. The first principle, umoja, which is unity. It is where we commit to be unified and to think in a unified manner and centralize ourselves around unity. The second principle, kujichagulia, talks about self-determination, where we will determine our destiny for ourselves. We will determine our purpose. The third principle speaks about ujima, and that talks about collective work, where we are collective in aspiring to maintain our own shops, our own businesses, to create more business, and also to be responsible for them. The fourth one talks about ujama, and that's where we commit to buying from African people, to investing in African innovations. The fifth one talks about nia. Every African born of an African woman must have purpose. This purpose is about what have you decided to do to make your African community, home, continent better than the way you came and found it. The sixth principle, Kumba. We believe in creativity, and if you are not creating as an African, you are no use to us, because every African must be able to use not just the mind but their hands to create something. And this is why we make sure that children, for Kwanzaa coming up on the 26th, children are focused. We want them to create. We want them to constantly be thinking, what else can we do to make, because we come from great inventors. And the last day of Kwanzaa, which is the most exciting one, is Imani. And in Imani we pledge to each other that we will have faith in our elders, we will have faith in our parents, we will have faith in our grandparents, we will have faith that the struggle and the liberation of African people is in our hands, and most importantly, we have faith on that day that we are winning and we will win as an African people.
Just another question, YAA Ashantewaa. First of all, Kwanzaa was anti-Christian in its nature, but it's evolved. It seems to embrace people from various religious persuasions. What brought that about?
Well, originally when it started, really, the idea was to give African people in the diaspora a sense of themselves and connecting themselves to this season of gathering that's happening in Africa as we speak. Now, what we have found is that Africans are multifaceted in their religious beliefs. And so we have found in the studies in the last 10 decades, a lot of Africans who celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, Eid, they find time to also be a part of this, because it is more cultural. And we have now recognized, even here in South Africa, others have found ways of expression in bringing out for example, we end Kwanzaa in Rustenburg. There's a Swana community. They have found their expression, and they're going to be doing the closing of the Kwanzaa in that expression. So Kwanzaa has found itself amongst, so we are not in competition with the Christmas. It was never meant to be like that. It was meant for us to not only look on a dominant way of celebrating this season, but to find ourselves alongside. For most people, that's what they're doing. For those of us who have been celebrating Kwanzaa, it is the only thing that we do.
So what is the right thing to say during Kwanzaa as it starts on the 26th? I know there's going to be an event, I think, in downtown Johannesburg to open the season. So what do we say to each other as Africans during Kwanzaa? Praise the
We say habari gani, what's the news? Because when we come to the end of the year, we meet together as Africans and we say, what's the news? Habari gani. So when we meet in Johannesburg, in Bays Valley on the 26th, we will light the national Kwanzaa candle. We will gather the children to tell them stories in African language. They'll be able to read books like the one I have here, and we will get them to celebrate themselves, and we will be celebrating them. And also we'll have the poets, we'll have the elders who will be telling us things of the past, because we have lost the connection, where elders are not given the pride of place to tell us how they once celebrated themselves. And then we'll go on during the day. There'll be stalls, everything that is African, everything that you can find, most of it handmade. And that is the key to this whole day and the next 7 days, while we're going to be celebrating across South Africa and across the continent and Africa extended.
Asante sana. YAA Ashantewaa Ngidi is Director Institute of Afrikology and Co-Director of Kwanzaa SA National Social Cohesion Advocate. So as you celebrate Christmas, you know that there are those who are celebrating African heritage from the 26th to the 1st, and that is Kwanzaa. As you heard us say, you must say habari gani.